This podcast may contain disturbing content for some listeners. It's intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
That's the only pictures that we have of him.
Kimberly Kite never met Amir Jennings, but knows his story well. The 18-month-old's bright and happy face introduced to South Carolina on a missing poster in late 2011.
But it was that little face. So, just beautiful little boy.
That little boy inspired Kite to start a Facebook page called Find Amir Jennings, roughly a month after he disappeared. She also helped organize vigils and rallied volunteers to put up missing posters in the early going. Thousands of people follow her Facebook page, and 3 years later, Kite is still posting messages.
As hard as it is to say, I can't even say hope anymore because it has been so long. But just, why should he be forgotten?
Investigators like Sergeant Arthur Thomas of the Columbia Police Department haven't forgotten. Thomas has been tracking the case since the beginning. And every road he goes down always seems to lead to the very same place.
The true key to Amir's disappearance is Zena Jennings.
Amir's mother, Zena, is in prison, sentenced to 10 years in fall 2012 after being convicted of unlawful neglect of a child tied to her son's disappearance. She has been the primary person investigators have looked to for answers. Both she and Amir were reported missing in 2011. Zena turned up about 2 weeks later without him. Investigators labeled Zena uncooperative after her arrest.
Some people may look at the arrest of Zena Jennings as a result, but I do not. I look at it as just a piece of the puzzle, but Amir is the goal.
Police say Jennings told conflicting stories about her son's whereabouts, leading them to search for the boy in 3 different states and getting assistance from almost 24 law enforcement agencies. In January 2012, a tip led search crews to North Columbia, and investigators thought they had cracked the case. That search, though, turned up nothing. And almost 3 years later, tips like that simply aren't coming in anymore, leaving investigators to try anything to drum up leads.
We are still looking in and have spoken with people that have been in relations with Zena, so forth, trying to see if they can recall anything. They vaguely recall her or don't recall Amir at all, if they do recall her. So time is definitely taking its toll.
Taking a toll on Kimberly Kite as well, an ex-cop and a mother herself who is committed to keeping little Amir's story alive until everyone has answers.
He's somewhere where he doesn't belong, and nobody's found him. And when somebody finds him and can put him to rest properly, then his little body's at peace.
32-year-old Rebecca Zahau's sudden death is still a mystery to many.
Soon after, the law enforcement ruled this to be a suicide. And ever since then, people have had questions about, was this really a suicide or was it something else?
Zahau's case is being revisited in a series on the Oxygen Network called Death at the Mansion, Rebecca Zahau.
I personally have been agonizing over this case ever since I heard about it. Ever since I heard that they declared it a suicide, I wanted to know what's really going on here.
Former prosecutor Lonnie Coombs and retired cold case investigator Paul Holes give the audience a closer look at this case.
We were fortunate to have unprecedented access to the actual source material from the official authorities that had done the investigation. So we were able to get the crime scene photos, the autopsy results, the investigative supplements.
At the time of her death, Zahau was dating Jonah Nigh, a wealthy businessman. By all accounts, they were living happily in a beachfront mansion in Southern California until tragedy struck. In July 2011, Zahau was at home with Nig's son, 6-year-old Max. Police say the boy fell over a banister. 2 days after the accident, police were called to the house once again.
Nigh, emergency, what are you reporting?
I got a girl hung herself.
Okay, is she still alive?
I don't think so.
Cops say Rebecca Zahau was found hanging from a balcony naked. Her hands were bound behind her back, and her feet were tied as well. She also had a T-shirt stuffed in her mouth. When the sheriff's office in San Diego announced the cause of death, many were surprised.
Was Rebecca's death a homicide? Again, the answer is no.
Investigators say it was a suicide, motivated by her guilt over what happened to Max, who died of his injuries 5 days after his fall. They even created a video showing how Zahau could have bound her own hands and feet before throwing herself off the balcony. For many, the results were hard to believe.
As a woman, I just had this strong reaction to this. There's no way a woman would choose to end her life this way.
My sister was murdered. It is pretty obvious she was murdered.
Zahau's family also refused to believe the police findings. Her mother testified as much.
Did you ever think that Rebecca would kill herself?
No. She's not. They killed her.
She means this man, Adam Nigh, Jonah's brother. Adam was at the mansion when she died. He made the 911 call after claiming to have found Zahau hanging from the balcony. Her family filed a civil lawsuit against him for wrongful death.
A civil lawsuit has a lower standard of proof, which is a preponderance of the evidence. And we were looking at this from a criminal point of view. If there could be criminal charges, which is a reasonable doubt standard, it's much higher.
In 2018, a civil jury agreed with Zahau's family.
Did Adam Nigh cause the death of Rebecca Zahau? The answer is yes.
And I'm going to tell him that I forgive him because my sister would have.
The family was awarded $5 million, but later settled for $600,000. Now the family wants the criminal case into her death reopened. Adam Nigh maintains his innocence.
The people I come in contact with, be it friends, co-workers, acquaintances, strangers, it's very gratifying to know that I've never come across one who thought for a second that I had anything to do with it.
The San Diego Sheriff's Department reportedly says it will not be charging anyone with Zahau's death after re-examining the evidence following the civil suit. For InsideEdition.com, I'm Mara Montalbano.
Planets code 4148 North St. Andrews.
What was supposed to be a fun night out with friends for a young Vanderhoof woman turned into a lifetime of anguish for her parents, who haven't stopped searching. The last time Madison Scott was seen was May 28, 2011. She was 20 years old. 6 years have passed, but her parents are still holding on to hope. Crime Stoppers needs your help. Do you have information that could lead to the whereabouts of Madison Scott? Madison, or Maddie as her friends and family call her, attended a party at Hogsback Lake, about 25 kilometers south of Vanderhoof. Although Maddie would have known the others at the party, a number of people showed up later in the night. Some of the partygoers would have been known to Maddie and her friends, and some would not. While most people had left Hogsback Lake when the party ended, Maddie stayed behind in her tent. 2 days later, on Sunday morning, Maddie's parents found her tent and off-white 1990 Ford F-150 pickup at the campsite. Her tent had been flattened, her purse left inside the truck. 2 items were missing: her keys, which may be on a black Gothic-themed lanyard, and her iPhone. Police believe those items may aid in the investigation. Maddie is close with her family. Her parents describe her as a beautiful, caring, and loving person with a great sense of humor. They've offered a reward of up to $100,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for her disappearance.
Please search your heart, search your mind, and review your memory, and call the RCMP with any bit of information you may have.
Investigators believe that someone knows something. They're asking anyone with information about the disappearance of Madison Scott to call police. Or if you wish to remain anonymous, visit bccrimestoppers.com or call 1-800-222-8477.
Welcome to episode 21 of True Crime XS.
The year is 2011. We've got a few comparison searches left from the killer's computer, and we've got a confession for a couple of murders, and a whole lot of speculation about what he might have been doing, what crimes he might have been committing, what missing persons cases he could be involved in, and what murders could he have gone under the radar on in 2011. And could other people have been charged and convicted of his crimes? We think that's a definite possibility. In fact, we think he described at least one crime in detail to investigators that occurred in 2011, which is the year we think he was mainly talking to them about to begin with, because that's how old his computer was, about a year old. And since he's arrested in 2012, this is the last regular episode of True Crime XS, as we break down all of the potential victims and crimes for this year. But let's start off listening to the killer talk for a minute about something we think he did. We're just not sure who he did it to, but we have two candidates. Here the killer talks about flying with a silencer in his luggage to somewhere in the Northeast U.S. And he talks about his plans for something big.
A bag of plumbing parts and threw it in with a bunch of my other tools in the suitcase. So that it would look like just normal everyday stuff. But I was always too paranoid because by then Anchorage, they don't even open the case. They just run the little swab. I guess all they look for is bombs and then x-ray it, and then that's considered clean. But.
So when you went down, when you traveled to, was it Illinois on the courier trip, right?
Yeah.
Did you take the silencer with you?
Yeah, that was the trip I took that one down, yeah.
But it was in pieces?
Yeah. Yeah, it was all... It was, yeah, I don't remember when I put it together. I was fishing and goofing off in the woods for a few days before, so...
Before you went in...
Before I was in Vermont, I was in, I stopped in a couple other states. I was in New York for a while fishing and I had that gun. I didn't have the other guns yet because they were still buried in Vermont. But yeah, I had it, and I had enough time to put the silencer together and test fire it and stuff to make sure it was still all aligned properly.
After you put it all back together?
Yeah, once I was done with the airlines.
So, just so I understand, when you left Anchorage, and this was in about June of 2011 when you went on that trip, or it was the end of May, actually, right?
Sounds right.
5 minutes.
5 minutes until
you're done.
Lights go off, or did you talk to Ryan? Or
what?
Did you talk to Ryan once it's done? Okay. Well, there you go.
All right.
But May, it was the trip in May of 2011.
Yeah.
And when you got on the plane here in Anchorage, you had all the parts for that silencer.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you got to the other end, you put it together.
Yeah, it was, every single piece of that silencer you can buy at Home Depot. It's just like a small roll of fiberglass pipe insulation.
You guys can stay.
Oh, you sure?
We're doing a regular run back. Yeah, go ahead. Take your time.
Are you sure you're going to be able to take them back?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thanks, man.
You can let me walk back.
He never loses his sense of humor.
Yeah, no, all the parts apart from each other, they look pretty mundane. They're just a piece of metal conduit and, like a bunch of white plastic PVC fittings with weird holes drilled in them. And, the main body of the silencer is made out of a shop vac tube. That's what the outer baffle was. That was the part that was the inner part had the plastic baffles in it, and there's the metal tube that was the structural support. I tried building silencers out of all plastic before, but once they heat up, they start to bend and move, and then next thing you know, you got like bullets bouncing all over the place. And so I used that metal conduit. That was the center, like the backbone of it, and then everything else was kind of wrapped around the outside. The fiberglass wrapped around the outside, and then to make it all look pretty and keep it self-contained, I had that shop vac wand extension kind of thing that slid down over it, and it was pretty slick once it was done. I mean, I could take it apart and then have all the pieces. You know, it only take me maybe 10 or 20 minutes. All it took was a screwdriver, 10 or 20 minutes to put it all back together. Which turned out to be a good thing because after I ran, I don't know, maybe 100 or 200 rounds through it, the fiberglass wrapped around the conduit, because the conduit had holes drilled through it, and the muzzle blast would blast out through the holes and tear up the fiberglass pretty good. If you were doing like rapid fire, it would get pretty hot too. So yeah, I messed around with it quite a bit.
And you said the accuracy for distance with this one, you could actually get this one to be accurate for a long distance.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you know that? I mean, how could you test that?
Oh, I shot it. I mean, I took it up in the woods out in Chugach, and I had a whole target system set up there. I had I'm going to give away my grand plan here, but I had a moving target system to where I could trip the target and it would start rolling downhill on a pulley, and it was just a piece of printer paper, but then I would put a black mark, like spray paint a black mark about that big for an aim point, and that's what I was shooting at with it at about 50 yards. That was the plan I had. I didn't actually ended up doing it that way, but that's one of the ideas I had for carjacking someone. Shoot out their tire while they were pulling up to a stop sign or something. But didn't find any good roads or places to do it. So plus I kind of had it in the back of my mind, but I didn't turn. It's pretty easy. People are pretty, especially if you get out in the backwoods, people are pretty naive and don't really expect anything bad to happen to them. So you don't really have to do anything as crazy as shoot out their tires. But that was one of the ideas I've had. Partly because you're on a road with the right amount of traffic, you can set up in the right spot and sit there with binoculars and kind of stake out who's in the car, like shopping kind of thing.
On targets.
Right. But anyway.
Wouldn't that draw attention, the shooting at the tires thing? I mean, they might not know who shot them out, but once the car...
Well, it's in the evening and there's not a lot of people around. It's on a backwoods road that gets a car every 5 or 10 minutes. You can shoot out someone's tire, she's by herself, and she doesn't have much choice but to stop. And if you shoot it out with a 22 in the sidewall, she's going to have to stop probably within half a mile of where you shoot it out. So that was... But, yeah, I don't know. I guess that was part of the plan I had for for why I wanted. There were other reasons why I wanted a silencer that was still accurate too. I had actually had an ambush set up here in Anchorage, and that one got really close because. But then APD showed up. They came out to tell the people that the park was closed. It was about 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and there was a young couple out there in their car, and I had the parking lot at the park staked out. APD showed up, and that, could have got ugly, but fortunately for the cop guy, he his backup showed up. And I mean, APD is really good. Like they're really good. Like I'll buy the book and stuff. And that's about the time that I decided to get a scanner, because I almost got myself into a lot of trouble on that one. Because I had no way. I didn't think that he would call in backup just for some kids sitting out in a park. And almost pulled the trigger even with him there, and that would have got really ugly really fast. But anyway, well, as soon as his backup showed up, I decided I better call it a night, and got back on my bike and took off.
And that was that Elderberry Park, or where was that?
That was the one out past Earthquake. I rode along the coastal trail there. There's the last park on the line out on the other side of the airport there. I guess it's still Northern Lights. You just follow Northern Lights out as far as it goes. There's a park out there.
On the right side or the left side? Water side or the?
On the water side, There's a coastal trail runs right by it.
Where that parking lot is?
Yeah, there's a parking lot. I mean, all the parks out there are parking lots. There's Earthquake Park, and that one I had staked out a time or two, but it was there's always a lot of cars driving by that one, and so I went further out. There's two more parks after that one, and I was mostly at the other two, the ones further out. That was right before I flew back east, and I don't know why I was just itching for trouble, I guess, because I knew I was going back east, and I just and then there was that one close call, and then it was kind of a spur of the moment thing, because it just so happened that like Kimberly was out of town and my kid was gone for the night. She was staying with her aunt for a couple of days, and I had just got the gun finished, and it was just out looking for trouble, and decided I was going to try and do it here, try and do something here, and down that cop or the two cop cars showed up. That kind of brought me back to reality enough that I decided to wait until I went back east. So.
You said wait till you went back east. Which trip back east was it?
The one in May of last year, May or June.
And then there was like what, a man and woman in the park, or?
Yeah, it was a couple. Well, I mean, there were several, but that was the one that I almost, like I say, that was the one I almost moved on. And I don't know why I was thinking about shooting the cop. I'd always been, ever since I was a kid, it's like, I don't know, white supremacist roots or something. that I was gonna ambush a cop someday, and for some reason that night I had been sitting there long enough, and I was just bored enough and just amped up enough that I almost did it, and then that other cop showed up, his backup showed up. Yeah. So I was just really psyched, I guess, about the gun, and just kind of started thinking about what it would be like. It was like you wouldn't even hear, if I had shot him, you wouldn't have even heard anything. You just would have been standing there at their window 1 minute, and the next minute you would have just been on the ground. They wouldn't have even known what happened. I mean, nobody would have known. You wouldn't have been able to hear anything. But fortunately for everybody there, it was like the other guy showed up. I just decided to get back under control for a couple more weeks over there.
Until you went on the main trip?
Yeah.
Was that the grand plan that you were referencing earlier?
Oh, I have hundreds of plans. I followed through on all of them, but that was... I already had guns back east. Mm-hmm. I started building that one here with the idea that I would be using it for something here. But, like I say, after staking out several different places, not just here, but in Eagle River and like at Glutna and a few other places I had in mind for doing something, I decided that it was just too risky. I mean, just Alaska, the way it's set up, is risky. There's only like one road in and out of town, and there's a lot of police that can be in any given area really quick. And so if things, whatever I was doing, if it hadn't gone perfectly, then, it would have been like no turning back type situation. So, but I was building that gun with the idea that I might use it here. Then I just decided to go back to my old stomping grounds back east.
All right, we're ready.
With the Shugash description, which is, he's describing a moving target, he branches off into this other story about an idea he had for a carjacking.
Okay, is that how that goes? He's talking about his shooting target, and then he goes and says that's how he leads into the whole shooting out a tire scenario.
Well, it gets interrupted. The way that it gets interrupted is he does that thing that he does where he drops a bombshell. That was, he had a grand plan. So that keeps coming back up and interrupting the story. But the moving target system or carjacking idea, shooting out a tire, are related. That was how he was testing the accuracy of the gun with different types of ammunition through the silence.
Right. But he didn't actually do that, did he?
Well, that is where we get to, I looked at Shelly Mook, and that was just something I was considering there because the car was blown out in a way that it would have covered holes in the tires because it was burnt. Well, I think it was with diesel. That's not confirmed. But then you pointed out that he said, we had this conversation a year ago. You originally said, I don't think he did that because he says it didn't go that way, or I didn't end up doing it that way. And he says, it turns out when you get out in the backwoods, you don't have to be that fancy or something. You don't have to be that complicated. You pointed out a case that we at one point thought was a missing couple, and that's Missy Darling.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was her and a guy named Jeremy Upchurch go missing from a casino.
Right.
And Upchurch turns back up, reappears. And we sort of decided, we didn't know on that one, but probably the police had him as a person of interest, and that was the way that case was going to go, I think is how we...
Right, because there were several things about her disappearance whenever I was looking into it. And so that would have been right around the Couriers, I think June the 10th.
Yeah.
And so she was last seen at a casino resort in Oklahoma, but she's actually from, I believe, was she from Texas or Oklahoma? Anyway, so it was a little confusing at first, but so I initially thought, based on what he was doing as far as the itinerary we had available after the Couriers, he flew out, but he was around for a few more days. And so, yeah, I had initially looked at her, but I felt pretty confident after I got done on that case that he probably had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, we were looking for, well, we sort of went looking for cases that might be described by that type of carjacking. And I think the way it went down was her vehicle had Texas plates on it. So we found out she had lived in Texas previously. She did live in Oklahoma at that time, and she was around the time of the couriers. And we sort of went with her as a what if related to Lauren Spearer.
Well, I for whatever reason, I don't remember it that way, but that doesn't mean anything. I was thinking we had gone that way because depending on how the casino went, she would have been like a prime target for like a robbery situation. Also, I think we were trying to get him somewhere like in a vehicle.
Yeah, we were trying to follow a path away from the couriers.
And her vehicle, I think, was abandoned somewhere. I thought he might abandon them if he were going to do that. And so, but ultimately, unfortunately, I believe her disappearance is not related to Keys.
Right. And that's sort of where I put her down as I don't know what to do with her. Like, seriously, I didn't think she was in this, but I did think that, like, someone similar to him might have got her. That, like, I actually wondered, it felt like somebody who knew what they were doing. The flat tires, her car found at a campground and locked up like days later. All of that stuff sort of made me.
Well, it sounds like Keys. I mean, honestly, it really does. It's just, I think that investigators were able to sort of narrow down what happened, but I'm not entirely sure. I just remember, and because it's been so long, I can't remember what what finally said, this wasn't him. But I know that there was discrepancies between, like, for example, I initially had read she had 2 flat tires. And that made me think of what you were telling me about, or what you were talking earlier about with Keys setting up his plan to shop for his victims, shoot their tire out. They would have to stop within, I think he said, half a mile or something like that. And so I thought, maybe he did that. But so there were discrepancies in what I initially had read, and then sort of they're like pseudo facts, people talking. Like I read something I believe her mother had written, and that had discounted. She said no, she didn't have flat tires, and she was the one who retrieved the vehicle. So if that's genuinely her talking, and of course it was way later, so it couldn't have been Keys doing it.
Right.
And so, yeah, ultimately though, it sounded really good at first, but as I kept digging, it looked more like she went to a casino, she had a great time, and she left with somebody and something happened. That's what it looks like.
Right. Yeah. Ultimately, I have her, basically she's in this list of others. She's a missing person. The case should be highlighted. There's a possibility she's at a location. I just don't think this killer put her in that location, if that makes sense. Because, like, there's one right there that, like, stood out to me, but it didn't show up on the maps that I thought he would use. Because I was guessing at that. That was just a pure speculation on my part. But it is there, and it is at that. I think it was Hugo Campground or something. It's a real specific type of campground out there. Hugo Lake, maybe. And I looked at her, and she is in the time frame of Lauren Spears. She's like,
she went missing on June 10th.
Okay, so it's 7 days then. The
couriers are June 8th, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing that made it so tight, was because his description of what happens with the couriers and the time that would have taken just to, like, because he says he was up in New Hampshire shortly thereafter, and he burnt their stuff in the national forest there. And that part, I liked it just because he said something about the shopping thing. And, this is the same thing that I had liked about Shelley Mook, who obviously has a prominent suspect and person of interest. And so ultimately I didn't end up putting her
She's the last person you'd expect as the victim in a shocking missing person mystery. Charley Mook, a young mother in a quaint small town, seemingly without an enemy in the world.
She was so excited to have a little girl.
Married to her high school sweetheart.
There was going to be nobody else for her, and he was such a great guy.
A popular teacher.
She was beloved. As a teacher, she glowed.
Everybody loves Charley. But somebody made her disappear.
Did somebody kidnap her? Was she carjacked, taken to an area, and killed?
Brittany Brooks remembers well the day when she and her best friend Charley first met Tyler Mook back in Pennsylvania.
Oh, he was good looking. We just needed to know about him. And the rest is history. I mean, they immediately started dating and were together all the time.
Not long after that, 18-year-old Charley and Tyler, who is 6 years older, are married with a baby on the way and headed to Tennessee to live near his family.
It was complete excitement. She was so excited to have a little girl, dress her up, and do all the things that a mommy does.
The little girl is named Liliana, but stress on the young marriage proves to be too much. And after 6 years together, the couple divorces.
Even after things had started to go wrong, there was always those second chances and hoping that it was going to be different. And it never ended up being different.
Charley moves into an apartment in a neighboring town. She starts work as a teacher at the local middle school.
From all accounts, she was a good teacher, well respected by her peers, well liked by the students.
And she is sharing custody of her daughter with her ex-husband Tyler when she starts dating someone new.
I actually didn't know him. He seemed very, very quiet and reserved compared to Tyler.
Things are looking up for Charley until the day she makes an appointment with a man at her apartment to get some work done.
So the handyman says she never showed up.
She wasn't there.
The next day, Charley does not show up for work. Brittany gets a call from the school and she has a bad feeling that something is terribly wrong.
They were really concerned. And in that moment, it was pure fear. I felt as though I knew that she was gone.
Brittany starts making calls.
I'm talking to everybody that we could possibly talk to, law enforcement, asking them why they're not doing more, why they're not pursuing more.
Charley's ex, Tyler, also calls police after she doesn't show up to pick up their daughter at his house.
I do not know exactly what he told them when he called. I just know that he called and reported her missing.
Around the same time, firefighters in a neighboring county are busy cleaning up after a late-night car fire in a remote field. Nobody is in the vehicle, and authorities figure it's likely an insurance job or a stolen car.
They did find an accelerant, so they knew that this was arson. They knew it was set, but they didn't know why. They thought this was probably somebody joyriding, and they dumped the car.
Everything in the car goes up in smoke. The plates are gone, and there's no way to trace it, except for one thing.
After the car cooled off, they were able to get the VIN number from the vehicle and run it.
It turns out that torch car belongs to Charley Mook.
What did the vehicle look like?
It was completely burned out. It just looked basically like a skeleton of the vehicle.
And Charley is nowhere to be found.
Literally without a trace. Community was devastated. Her disappearance affected everybody. Her students were very sad, shocked.
Police start retracing Charley's steps from when she was last seen leaving work, headed home to meet a man working on her apartment.
Was the handyman ever found by police, do you know?
Yeah, he was spoken to.
Do you know if the handyman's alibi was ever verified?
I do not know that.
And what about the new man in her life?
Charley was dating someone at the time she vanished.
She was. I actually searched Shelley's new apartment in Murfreesboro for any information that would give me into her frame of mind.
What was Shelley's normal routine?
She pretty much went to work and went home.
Next, the mystery of Shelley's disappearance only deepens with a bizarre pocket-dialed 911 phone call.
911, address emergency. Hello?
They know I want to stay in the United States. They can find me.
The operator is listening on the line, and it's a man. A man is talking about the Charley Mook case. He accidentally butt dialed 911.
They want to come arrest you, don't worry.
24-year-old Charley Mook is still missing without a trace. Authorities are searching for her and working the case hard, but friends and family fear the worst.
Never would she leave her daughter. Her daughter was her world. She did not leave voluntarily.
The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has now been called in to re-examine the case, meticulously looking into all possible suspects, including the handyman she was supposed to meet at her apartment and her new boyfriend.
Did you interview the maintenance man?
I did not. The law enforcement had already interviewed him and cleared him.
Private investigator Kevin Keel was hired by Charley's family to help find her. Keel says once cops cleared the handyman and the new boyfriend, they shifted their focus back on her ex-husband, Tyler Mook. And it turns out that things in the marriage were a lot tougher than many people realized.
He was abusive, at times cruel. Court records show that he pushed her around, snatched her around when he would get upset. There is a record of the domestic violence that was going on in that house.
Remember, Tyler says he called the cops the day Charley went missing, saying she was supposed to pick up their daughter, but never showed. Now cops believe Tyler may have been the last one to see Charley. In fact, they say she actually stopped at his house with their daughter Liliana in the car.
After getting out of school and picking up her daughter, she came to Tyler's residence that afternoon, supposedly to return a box of Tyler's belongings.
She used to live at this house. We know that she got there, but nothing. She just vanished into thin air.
As Charley's family suspicions mount around Tyler, Charley's mother files for custody of 6-year-old Liliana. Tyler fights to keep her and is interviewed on camera during this custody hearing. But once on the hot seat, he clams up.
You were upset with Charley's dating other men?
On advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer on the grounds of the Fifth Amendment.
Charley's family took him to court because they thought once they took him to family court, he'd answer some questions, but they were wrong.
Astonishingly, he pleads the Fifth more than 150 times.
You exhibited violent outbursts against Charley as a result of other men?
On advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer on the grounds of the Fifth Amendment.
Then, out of the blue, he suddenly answers a strange question about what happened in his house on the day Charley went missing.
Did you have sex with Charley on February 28th?
Yes.
What time?
On advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer on the grounds of the Fifth Amendment.
Why do you think he would answer that question out of all the other ones?
It was baffling. It was almost as if he was proud of being able to say that he had sex with her. And we don't really know if that's true. He was proud of it, absolutely.
But now, authorities also interview little Liliana about the day her mother disappeared. And her answers raise a huge red flag.
The version that Liliana told was that Charley got out of the car, went to the door, left her in the car seat. Charley went inside with Tyler. At some point, Tyler came back outside, got her out of her car seat, took her into the residence, and took her to her old bedroom. She said she never saw her mother when she came into the residence, went into the bedroom.
She was told to go to her room, and she never saw her mom again. There's no doubt in my mind that she's gone because of him.
Police name Mook as a person of interest in Charley's disappearance, but they declined to talk about the case with Crime Watch Daily.
And over to the dumpster.
Private investigator Keel has also spent countless hours digging for facts and working closely with Charley's family and the law. And he has a very bad feeling about Tyler Mook and Charley's car, found burning in a field only hours after her disappearance.
I think that Charley was probably deceased before Liliana was brought into the house by Tyler. And at some point that night, I think Charley was disposed of and her car was disposed of.
And then there is this bombshell. If Tyler was involved, Keel doesn't believe he acted alone.
He had to have had help if he were the one that disposed of the car and burned it, because you're talking roughly 30 miles from his home. There's no way he could leave Liliana in bed alone, go burn the car, and then walk home in that amount of time.
And 10 days after Shelley's disappearance, Keel also finds what may yet turn out as a key piece of evidence, a surveillance tape from the early morning hours after she went missing.
I was able to uncover a video from a convenience store several miles from his home that showed him around 3 a.m. on March 1st, pulling up in his red S10 truck.
Does it stop at the dumpster?
It does stop at the dumpster for roughly 5 to 10 minutes.
So who has the video right now?
The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has custody of the video.
Will they tell you anything about the video?
They will not.
Meanwhile, investigators in the custody case are floored by another shocking revelation involving Liliana.
They found out that Tyler had been talking to his 6-year-old daughter about burning down his ex-mother-in-law's house. That was unimaginable. He wanted to give the little girl matches so that she could actually help burn down her grandmother's house.
I mean, this little girl's mother is missing. And now this?
Ultimately, Shelley's family wins custody of Liliana, but Tyler is still seemingly obsessed with getting her back. Evidence in this 911 call he made by mistake.
911. Hello?
Incredibly, it's a pocket dial from Tyler Mook himself.
And they know that I'm not going anywhere right now because I don't have Lily.
During the 22-minute call, he talks to his father while they work with power tools. Most of it is garbled, but what comes through seems to be about Shelley's missing person case.
They can't prove nothing. They want to come arrest me with a warrant.
And he talks about a car. Exactly whose car, we don't know.
Someone keeps bothering me about that car, and they're going to try to bust me with that.
Minutes later, a second call to 911 comes in from a very concerned Tyler Mook. This one is one he intended to make.
Did you get a call from this number here a couple minutes ago?
Yes, we had an open line from it.
What happens on that open line? Does it get recorded and stuff like that?
Investigator Keel says one of the biggest reveals during the call is Mook's state of mind.
Tyler's afraid the police are watching him, afraid he's about to be picked up at any time, and just seems really paranoid in the conversation with his father.
Mook has never been charged with Shelley's disappearance, and his lawyer has denied he had anything to do with it. But his troubles with the law are far from over. Up next, Tyler Mook leaves Tennessee and heads to Florida. He wants to start a new life with a new love, but now she's terrified too.
I just kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and that time I thought I was going to die.
So in 2011 in Alaska, there's 13 missing persons cases, all men, every one of them, that are unsolved today. One of them isn't him, but 11 or 12 of them probably are. You're probably looking for locations up there. I know that's sort of a bold statement, but they're scattered in a pattern. If you break that down, all the sudden disappearances that happened in 2011 in Alaska, they're probably all his.
Whether he was only active back east or he was active in Alaska too, well, that remains to be seen. But we definitely have to take a look at the crimes he self-reported from the middle of 2011.
Were devastated by their disappearance and in fear for their lives.
Bill and Lorraine Courier's family made another plea Friday for the public's help.
Every day that they're not found increases our concern, so our families have come here today to offer a reward of up to $10,000.
The reward comes as police say they've scoured surveillance video and records and searched a square mile around the couple's Essex home, including the area where their car was found abandoned a week ago.
We have received dozens of leads from concerned citizens regarding possible sightings of the Couriers.
And police are still looking for this person of interest, possibly seen driving the couple's car after they disappeared.
She was very, very afraid.
Linda Pratt, an old friend of Lorraine Courier, says they last saw each other 2 months ago.
We just started laughing and talking about old times.
When the two started catching up, Pratt says Courier told her she'd been bothered by a man lately.
She never mentioned a name. She just said, this guy, at this point, I'm scared to death of him. It's like he's stalking me.
Essex police confirmed that they have spoken to Linda Pratt about what she heard, and they're following up on that information. They would not confirm whether Lorraine Courier had made any reports to authorities about being scared.
The not knowing it hurts.
For Pratt and for the Courier's family, each day without news from them is a struggle.
Please search your heart. Search your mind and review your memory, and call the Essex Police with any bit of information, however small it may seem to you, that will help to save the lives of our
These
dear
are pictures
Billy
of what
Marie.
police believe Bill Courier's cell phone looks like, a phone that is now the focus of their investigation into the disappearance of the Essex man and his wife, Lorraine Courier. Search teams hit the water and the ground looking for that cell phone or any sign of the couple missing since early June.
Dieter's got the north, you got the south.
At this point, I would consider it a significant piece of information that we need to follow up on very, very thoroughly. This is perhaps one of the better pieces of information we've had thus far in the case. That phone would have had to have been within this yellow area.
Police say phone records subpoenaed last month from Verizon show someone from UVM called Bill Courier just before 7:30 a.m. on June 9th. That call, they say, was received somewhere in this sweeping area made up mostly of woods and swamps across from Fort Ethan Allen along the Winooski River. This is the 10th time law enforcement has searched for the Couriers believed to be victims of foul play, and police say they realize time is ticking.
Well, time is limited. We certainly want to search when there's not snow on the ground.
During this search, the couple's family watched from afar, hoping something about their loved ones would turn up. In Essex Junction, Mia Moran, News Channel 5.
New documents released by a judge focus on search warrants conducted at Bill and Lorraine Courier's home in Essex Junction. The couple disappeared in June. In the days that followed, police began taking evidence from the home. The warrant issued by a judge authorized police to take many types of evidence. They included financial documents, computers, and credit cards, also physical evidence like blood and fingerprints. By order of the court, one of the items allowed to be seized is blacked out, considered too sensitive to the ongoing investigation. An inventory of the first search in the days after the couple went missing lists 3 small notebooks and receipts, also a few credit cards, a videotape, and a USB drive. 2 items taken from the couple's kitchen are blacked out. Subsequent searches in July and August turned up more evidence. It included military documents, keys, cutters, and a pipe and baggie with residue, among other items. Detectives with the Essex Police Department were out for Columbus Day and not available to provide more context about these searches. I did speak to the police chief, though, who said it's the blacked out areas like these that are the items still important to the investigation. In that case, it's likely what has not been released that says the most. A search of the Courier's car found abandoned days after they went missing is completely redacted. 10 items seized, and all of them still considered important enough to hold back from the public.
Searching for clues in the soil. Day 2 of renewed efforts in the case of a missing Vermont couple that disappeared almost a year ago. Good evening, I'm Stephanie Gorin. George is off tonight. The second day of a police search in an area off Route 15 in Essex. Police aren't saying much about what they're looking for or what they may have found. But they do say it is about the case of Bill and Lorraine Courier, who've been missing since last June. News Channel 5's Jack Thurston live in Essex with more. What's happened there today, Jack?
Well, Steph, the very latest from here in Essex is that police have used that large piece of equipment behind me to fill in the hole that they spent 2 days digging for hours today. It appears that police were really scrutinizing something at the bottom of that hole that they found. We even saw them filling several evidence bags, but if they found something, they're not sharing that information with reporters.
I'm sure everybody's waiting and hoping that
they're finding some answers.
From the windows of her antique store, Debbie Lang watched 2 long days of police investigation in Essex, Vermont. Detectives were digging into the foundation of an abandoned home that was recently demolished. They were looking for evidence that may lead them to Bill and Lorraine Currier. The Essex couple vanished last June. Police call them crime victims, but they still haven't been found, and detectives have revealed almost nothing about their disappearance. Any word on what they found, Brad? Essex Police Chief Brad LaRose rushed to the dig site Friday afternoon after investigators made what appeared to be a significant discovery. They froze work, photographed the bottom of their hole, and moved an evidence preservation tent into place, along with large tarps. All other excavation work stopped, but police would not discuss the development. Neighbors just hope if it was a big find, it finally brings answers in this more than 10-month-old investigation.
I think it's brought hope that maybe they haven't given up.
And police have not given up. They have said several times over the past few months that this case remains a top priority. Just about an hour ago, Police Chief Brad LaRose sent out a written statement saying that his investigation is just too sensitive to discuss why his team was here and what, if anything, they found. For now, live in Essex, Jack Thurston, News Channel 5.
And yes, that sketch that they're talking about in these clips is of this killer. The information they got that the Curriers might be in that landfill came from his May 8th interview, where he describes what he did to them, and the previous interview where he tried to use the Curriers as a bargaining chip. And I'm not going to play that whole interview, but I am going to play a piece of it so that you can hear some of what I heard and what Meg heard. And I'll drop a link in the show notes if you want to listen to the whole interview, because it is interesting, but it's also disturbing.
Whatever. I mean, that car has never left Alaska, so...
Those are good arguments, and those are the arguments we're going to use to try to work that out. But I'm just letting you know that
I understand. It's going to take some time. I believe you.
And just so you know, where we started out was the answer was no to everything. And we were able to talk to him and point out a lot of these things, not everything that you've mentioned, but a lot of the things you've mentioned we pointed out to the attorneys, primarily the state attorney, but also the other attorneys involved and our bosses. And we ultimately got them to agree that, yeah, you have done a good job of cooperating and kind of holding up your end of the bargain thus far. And so we got them to agree.
And you continue to do so. And that's the main thing that we're focusing on.
Right, but... Look, I want to continue. Like I say, if I get the few things that I've asked for, or if I at least feel like they're being worked towards, I have no reason. Like I say, I already know I'm never getting out of prison or whatever, so I have no reason to not tell you more information, stories, or whatever. However, I'm not going to just do it on a whim and just because I'm bored or because I feel like it. I don't. There's no incentive for me to do that.
Understand.
The things I've done, and I didn't do them because I don't feel bad about them, and I didn't do them because I felt I had no other choice. I did them for myself, so it's just as good. It's better actually for me to keep them to myself because they're mine. Sure. And so unless I'm going to get something in return, aside from just an ego boost by talking about them, then I'm not going to talk about them. I don't have any interest in it. Okay. I've already given the attorneys everything they need, and if they want to know about more stuff, I can give them that too, but they're not going to get it. I'm not going to be the typical tactics of letting me sweat it out in a cell or threatening me with whatever, the death penalty, whatever, isn't going to work on me because I don't. It doesn't faze me really.
Well, yeah, we wanted to address that. I just wanted to let you know that we do have the order to release the 2 cameras and the phone, and that we were successful in that, and we're working on the vehicle. But we are going to have to be able to convince them that our relationship and this is going to continue, and so that's where we need to.
Well, that's the only way it can continue.
Okay. And you were also in your last meeting talking about the house, the Courier house, and maybe had some concerns about whether we had the right one and what was the status of that investigation.
Right.
Well, do you have the photo of the house?
I've got. The short version, Israel, is that I know that we have the right house. I don't have the photos from the actual search when I went out and searched the area where the house had been demolished and stuff. The best I can do right now is pull up some photos off of the internet to show you the house that we searched, which I'm very confident is the right one. And I'm going to explain to you why. The short version is, as you know, we don't have the Courier's bodies in hand yet. The house was demolished. We thought that they were probably in the basement when the house was demolished. That didn't wind up being the case. Among other things, we had cadaver dogs out there. They alerted on the same corner of the basement, the southeast corner of the basement that you told us about, so they alerted there. We talked to a number of folks on the demolition crew. I think it was about 3 or 4 folks on the demolition crew, and they all ironically said, yeah, we smelled this horrible odor. It smelled essentially like a dead body or dead animal, that type of thing, depending on who you talk to. And yet none of them, much to our shock and awe, decided it might be a good idea to go in and walk through the house. So apparently they didn't do that. Otherwise, the bodies would have been discovered. They just went ahead with their demolition. I don't know why they did that. Doesn't matter. But they did. We did some additional research on how the house was demolished. It was very similar to what you described in one of the interviews a while back, by the way. And our best guess, frankly, is they were using a huge crane to basically excavate the site and stuff, and it would go in and basically pick up the better part of half a dump truck load of stuff.
In one scoop. So
yeah.
I mean, huge.
And our
bucket.
Our best guess at this point in time is Murphy's Law. They scooped up the bags without basically splitting them open, that type of thing, and put them in the dump truck. We've tracked them down to the dump in Vermont, and we actually have folks there right now today searching it. And we've got it narrowed down to a pretty small area of the dump.
Where all that debris was taken from that house.
And
they got their work cut out for them.
And I mean, just to again, I mean,
Mr. Courier's glasses were found.
Yeah, and we were able to match those to him, so they were found at the scene. So we do have a connection to the scene and to the Couriers and stuff, and we've been able to corroborate the information that you're giving us on this. It's just not going as quickly or as smoothly as we would all like, and frankly, the way that it usually goes in most cases, it's just not going that well. Every once in a while, there's a hiccup, and that's really what this is. But I printed out some stuff. Again, I'm not asking you to just take my word for it. The reason I don't have the photos is because the same folks that were running point for us on the search of the house were the ones that tracked it back to the dump and then ultimately are there right now today searching. Right. So I didn't want them to delay what they were doing at the dump just to send me a bunch of pictures. So, but what I'm going to show you here is these are photos. This one's at a little bit of a distance. Ironically, it's got a white truck in it, though. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, and we knew it was. I mean, you're good with your directions and everything else. So this is the place that was ultimately demolished and that we searched and did not find the bodies in.
Were there any interior pictures, like from the real estate listing agent or something?
That's all we were able to find with that.
Because if they ever want the interview of, like what happened inside the house, that might be. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's probably good enough, just to picture the outside.
So clearly, I mean, you can see I'm not bullshitting you here. This is the place that we went to and researched. This is also a story I was going to show you just to show that we're continuing to do what we were telling you about, and I'm not BSing you on the search of the dump. We started the search yesterday, and they're continuing today, and it's going to take a little while. It's a dump.
And if you read that, you're not going to find any relation to you or Alaska or anything. We've been successful, and the attorneys have been successful in doing just what they explained that they could do by being in control of this.
And from a description of how they could recover the bodies and what they might be looking for to a description of what he did before he broke into their home. There are a lot of clues in what the killer is saying that we could not duplicate anywhere else, but we could find patterns related to other crimes. And no matter how we tried to explain it all away, it sounded like this killer had been doing a lot more abductions than the FBI let on.
Daylight. It was probably about 6 in the morning when I had everything wrapped up. Probably.
And then you said you left in their car and you drove around a while to find a place to go directly to the parking lot and dump the car, or did you do some driving around?
No, I drove directly to the Lowe's parking lot, or maybe it was Home Depot. I forget the store. Lowe's or Home Depot, right there across from where my hotel was. I left the car in that parking lot and walked back to the hotel.
Oh, so you didn't actually take the car right then and there to...
No, I went back to the hotel room and I was waiting for. I was thinking about getting some sleep, but by then it was pretty late in the morning, and I wanted to get up. I wanted to get to the banks up north by like the time they opened. It would have been like probably 9 or 10. So I was just getting everything packed up in the motel room. I think I was planning to check out that morning, and so I got everything packed up and kind of sorted through some of the stuff I had taken from their house, and I think I used the dumpster at the motel to throw all the clothes and whatever else I had used at the house into the dumpster. And then I went, I drove the car I had rented to another parking lot. It was across the street from the Home Depot, and then went and got in their car and drove up north to where the banks were.
Where at up north?
It's up Route 15 there. I think the furthest bank that I was looking at was up in a town called Johnson or Johnsonville or something. And then there were 2 or 3 more banks on the way back down that I was planning on. But I got about halfway up to Johnsonville or whatever it was called, and I started noticing some things about the car that made me nervous, and so I just
like it wouldn't make it?
Yeah, Murphy's Law. I didn't want to tempt it, and so I just kind of scratched that idea and drove.
But your plan was to use their car to at least...
I was figuring it might be... It would have been... I was going to do them really quick, and because I wanted to do like 2 or 3 of the small ones, these small banks that hardly ever have any customers in them, and so I already had all the guns with me. The guns were all set up and ready to go, and then I had their car, and so I knew I could leave my car would never even be seen up there. So I think I already had a disguise with me and stuff too. But yeah, the car made me nervous because I remember it had a clutch that slipped, and then there was like 2 cans of antifreeze or coolant or something in the back seat, and I remember asking about it. It's like, what the heck are these for? And they're like, oh, the car overheats. I was like, oh crap. So I knew the car had problems, but I didn't know how serious they were until the next morning, and I got to see the car like in the daylight. I was like, oh my god, this thing's a piece of junk. So,
what kind of car was it?
It was a Saturn. I think it was a sedan. Yeah, it had a trunk. I think it was a blue Saturn, blue or green. Any older one, it was like, I think it had like 100-something zillion miles on it, and it was probably like mid-90s or something.
You said you had your disguise with you. What was your disguise going to be?
I don't remember.
Did you change that up?
Well, yeah. It's not a disguise if you don't change your disguise.
It's a costume.
Good point.
Would you guys going to be that trip?
No, I think it was the same one. I think it was pretty much the same idea I had that I used in Texas.
The dust mask.
The dust mask and the helmet. Except slight variation. I think I also had a nylon stocking or something, like a hairnet that I was going to put my hair up under the helmet so people thought I had short hair. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Texas I had short hair and I taped hair on the inside of the helmet so people thought I had long hair. Other than that, I think it was pretty much the same idea. I think maybe I had a safety vest on that one though.
The one in Texas?
The one I was set up to do in Vermont. And I don't know.
Not too far off the construction worker look. That's what you.
Yeah, I was pretty after the courier thing. That was pretty intense, and just because of how carried away it got, and so I between that and the car, I just decided not to do the bank robbery. I was afraid I was gonna freak out and get trigger happy or something. So
you wouldn't be able to keep control, huh?
Yeah, I just was worried about.
Mm-hmm. Which guns did you have with you when you were going up to look at the banks?
I had Well, when I went to look at the banks, I had just the two that I was going to rob the bank with because I was in their car. I didn't really have much of my stuff in their car. Mm-hmm. I had there was their suitcase in the trunk of their car, and it had a bunch of other stuff. It had some lingerie I took from her house and or from her room, and jewelry. It had miscellaneous stuff. I think maybe the gun that I took, all that stuff was in the trunk of their car in a suitcase. I think I had thrown in a couple of their suitcases.
The gun, you mean you're talking about the gun you threw in the
gun I took from their house.
And threw that in the reservoir as well?
Yeah, it ended up.
That was the 38, right?
Yeah.
Where do you buy hair? Where'd you get hair to put on on your helmet? Like costume hair or real hair?
No, it was actually real hair.
Oh. Okay.
The 38, you may have mentioned this before and I'm just blanking on it, but do you remember, was it nickel or blued?
It was an airweight. I think it was a Smith & Wesson, but it was blued.
So it was a blue.
Yeah, the barrel, but I think the rest was aluminum, black painted aluminum or something.
All right. That makes sense. Going back to the couriers, did you leave the bottles in the bags, the Drano bottles in the bags?
No, I think I took all that stuff with me.
Okay. And I think you told us previously they didn't have a whole lot of clothing on them. Was that accurate?
No, I think he might have had shorts on.
Okay.
Either boxers or swimming trunks. They weren't normal going out to town type of shorts.
Do you remember what color or style or anything like that?
I think they were black, but I could be wrong.
And I might have missed it. Did you say boxers or briefs or?
I think they were. If I remember correctly, they were swimming trunks, with the zippered pockets and the quick dry type material. But they could have just been. They were just some lightweight shorts. They weren't. Yeah, I think they just had a drawstring. They weren't the type you would put a belt on or something like that. They were, because I think he was. Yeah, they were the ones he was sleeping in.
Okay.
And
he was sleeping in them when you came in the house?
Yeah. Yeah, because he was wanting to put on some other clothes. Yeah, that wasn't happening. So.
Nice try, huh?
Yeah. What about her? What kind of clothing did she have on?
She didn't have on any clothes. Okay. Not after she was dead.
Okay.
So one of the other things too, I'm kind of curious. You seem pretty good at getting in the house and that kind of stuff. Were you ever worried about them making a phone call or calling the police while, like, hearing you when you were in or anything like that? I mean, if they were light sleepers, could they have heard you get in and called the police or?
Oh, well, I think I already told this part of the story, but after I found that house and decided that it was probably just a couple, I think I even had it pegged down just from looking at the outside that it was probably an older couple, just because of the way they had their backyard set up. They had like a swimming pool and a deck and a barbecue, and it just looked like a, like older couple that didn't have kids kind of house. Mm-hmm. And so I knew there was probably only one room in the house that was being used as the bedroom, and so I walked around the house, and then I was pretty sure I'd found it just from walking around the house.
Oh, the room they were in?
Yeah, because I heard, even though the blinds were closed, I heard fans running in it, and it was hot that night. It was really hot and muggy, and it had been raining, and so I already knew, like in my head, before I even went into the garage, I already had in my head about what the layout of the house was. It was just a ranch house, so it wasn't hard to figure out. And yeah, but I mean, I knew that they, you always think of that. And they did. They had a gun right there in the nightstand, but, just...
Which gun was in the nightstand?
The one I took.
You had it sitting right on top of the nightstand?
It was in a drawer in the nightstand. But it wasn't loaded. It wouldn't have done them much good. No, it wouldn't have mattered. They couldn't. Because once I was actually in the house, I was probably in the bedroom within 5 or 6 seconds from the time the glass broke. So.
Where did you break the glass at?
The door. The kitchen door between the garage and the kitchen.
Were they still asleep when you got to there, or do you think they heard that?
They heard it, but they were just barely. I mean, they were
just wondering what it was.
Waking up, yeah.
So you don't do anything or to prevent them from calling or anything like that, or using the phone or anything like that?
Well, I cut the phone lines outside the house.
Oh, okay. Right.
I cut the phone lines as soon as I picked the house because usually if there's an alarm system, it'll trigger the alarm, and
Oh, I see. So you could watch and see.
Right. So I cut the phone lines, and like I said, the neighbor next door, he was still up. He kept coming out and smoking, so I knew I wasn't gonna break in until. Or no, I broke into the garage, but I knew I wasn't gonna break into the house until I was sure that the neighbors were asleep. So I was in the garage, and I unlocked the back door of the garage so I could come and go. And then I found the phone box on the side of the house, and I had my side cutters with me, and I cut the main wire of the phone box, and figured if they had any kind of alarm or something, the police would do a drive-by or something. Mm-hmm. And so after I cut that, I was outside for probably an hour or two, just kind of hanging out mostly in the backyard behind the swimming pool, waiting for everybody in the neighborhood to go to sleep, and also watching the street for cops or cars driving by, but there's never anything.
So what happened after you entered the house? I know you said you went right back to the bedroom, took 5-6 seconds. What happened then?
Oh, I told them right away what was going on.
Were they cooperative at first, at least, both of them?
Yeah. Pretty shocked.
I'm sure.
People never expect stuff to happen to them.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what you told them?
I just, it's like a blitz attack. You just make sure they know right away who's in charge, and immediately tie them up and tell them what the rules are, that there's no talking unless I talk to them. They don't move unless I tell them to move, and did their hands behind their back and had them, pulled everything off the bed and got their hands and their feet together with cable ties and then just started talking, like asking them one question after the other, and then I would ask them like the same questions over to see, like if they were
lying.
Yeah. I remember the first thing I asked them was if they had an alarm or if they had a safe. And I was pretty sure they hadn't lied about that stuff, but then I asked them again a few minutes later, and then I'd ask them like where the guns are, where the jewelry is, where the cash is, where the cell phones are, where their ATM cards are.
So they you don't have to tell them, but they know they're being robbed. That's what they think is happening. They're being robbed.
Well, they kept trying to ask me. I didn't tell them what was happening. They kept trying to ask me what was going on, and I never answered them really. It's just have to keep telling them to shut up and listen to me. And eventually, they're just quiet, and then I kind of, when I was going through the house, checking out the house and checking where everything was and getting everything loaded into suitcases and stuff, I'd keep peeking back in the bedroom. I had my headlamp on, but I would look back in the bedroom every once in a while to make sure that they weren't trying anything. And it seems like at one time she started trying to roll over or something, and I think I grabbed her by the neck, or just to. Yeah, that's what it was, because they weren't taking me they weren't taking the situation seriously enough, I guess, and that was a problem throughout the night that I was having. So, which it surprised me.
That they didn't take you seriously?
Yeah, that they didn't take me seriously.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I don't know. 20/20 hindsight. It's probably because they didn't even know that I had a gun. I told them I had a gun, but they never saw me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like anytime I was in the room, there were never any lights on, and so
just your headlamp.
Right. So I mean, if you look at someone with a headlamp on, you can't tell what they have in their hands. And
sure.
Plus, they were. I think they were just kind of in awe that it was happening. Like they couldn't believe it, and they kept, like wanting an explanation as to why it was happening. So yeah, But yeah, she tried. It seemed like she tried to roll over. She was talking to him. She was like I could tell they were trying to make a plan and figure out what to do. And I like jumped up over on the bed and grabbed her by the neck and shoved her head down into the pillow and just told her I was, even when they didn't think I was watching, I might be watching, and no matter what they tried to do or what they said, it was only going to piss me off. It wasn't going to change anything for them. So after that, they stayed quiet for quite a while and didn't do anything. And then the next time I started having trouble with them was when I got them in the car.
How long were you at the house there, do you think? How long were they bound at the house?
I doubt I was in the house for more than 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember about when you went into the house?
No, I don't. I don't. It's funny you should ask that, because I kept wondering what time it was, and nobody has clocks anymore. Everybody's got cell phones, and I didn't have my cell phone with me. So I didn't know what time it was. I knew it was getting late, but I didn't know how much time I had. And I remember when we got to the house, the one there on Route 15, I remember, like once everything got going, I was like, man, I wonder how much time I have. And then I remember even though I'm sure we were there for a few hours, it was, it seemed like really quick. All of a sudden it was getting light outside, and I was like, what the heck? So yeah, I kind of lost track of time there.
So you drove straight from their house to the house that you'd already picked out, or did you have to find that?
No, we drove straight there. I already knew where it was.
You said that you were kind of gathering stuff up, putting it in suitcases and stuff at the house. What kinds of things were you gathering up?
I grabbed a bunch of her laundry and went through a lot of their dressers, drawers and stuff, just to kind of try and figure out stuff about them, and grabbed everything. All their financial stuff was in her wallet, and I think I grabbed her purse and emptied out all their jewelry. Their wedding rings were sitting on the coffee table. I think I just threw all the jewelry. I didn't really look at the jewelry when I was in the house, but then when I looked at the jewelry later at the motel, most of it was so bad I just tossed it. I just threw it out with the rest of the stuff. I think there were a few things I held on to. But
where did you throw the stuff out at?
Almost everything went into that dumpster at the motel I stayed at. I forget what I'm sure you guys have that.
I think you told us last time before, that there was some stuff in the suitcase and you burned it.
Yeah.
At a campground. I want to say you said it was in New Hampshire. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of the campground or where
no.
it was at, anything like that?
I could probably find it on a map, but it would probably take a while.
And you burned it in a campsite there, yeah.
It wasn't even in a campsite. It was out in the boondocks in the woods. So,
okay.
I mean, yeah, you could find it, but I didn't stick around for the fire. I just lit it on fire and walked away. And
you use an accelerant?
Yeah, I used diesel. Mm-hmm. And everything was soaking wet. It had been raining nonstop, and so I remember I went into the woods. It was like in a national park, national forest area, and built a pretty big pile of wet wood and stuff because I knew the stuff wasn't going to burn very well, and just lit it with the diesel. I only stuck around long enough to make sure that it actually caught on fire, and then I took off.
How much diesel did you put on it?
I think I had about a half-gallon bottle. Well, no, I had more than that. I had about a gallon of diesel because I saved half of it. I was going to drive by where I left the car and just torch it that night if the cops hadn't found it, but it was already gone. So I think I used the diesel in New York. I didn't end up using it in the car, obviously.
What did you use it in New York for?
I don't remember. Just starting campfires or something.
So you drove them. You were only in their house about 15 minutes. Drove straight to the house out there in the country, and we know that from our past conversations that you had him downstairs.
Yeah.
What, he wasn't bound or anything? You just
he was.
Oh, he wasn't? I thought you had some struggles with him.
Yeah.
Did he get himself unbound?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then you had her on a different level of the house.
Yeah.
Upstairs.
How did you have him bound? I know you said zip ties, but where were his hands? Were they in front or behind, or?
They were behind.
I think you said that getting them in the vehicle was interesting or difficult. There was some difficulty.
Yeah, that's when they started. That was the first time they got a look at me, and because the dome light came on, I guess, and they were both checking me out, like trying to figure out what was going on. Yeah, and so they were. So then after they saw my. I mean, I had a mask on, but had a mask and the hood of my jacket on. But they would, they started trying to talk to me and stuff, and
try to personalize it.
Yeah. And I would go along with it a little bit because it seemed like it was like the guy he used to be in the same unit in the Army that I was in. He was 25th Infantry Division or something.
No kidding.
Yeah, I found one of his insignia patches when I was going through their dresser, and I was asking him about it. Anyway, yeah, I was just bullshitting them, and they were, they of course wanted to know why we were leaving in the car.
What'd you tell them?
No, I just told them it was a kidnap for ransom setup, and that there were other people involved in it. So,
did you take the laundry, clothing, and stuff to make it look like maybe they had gone on a trip? Is that part of the reason?
Well, I was thinking that might. I wasn't really thinking. That was part of my thinking, but I wasn't doing it for that reason, really, because I knew that with the broken window and the cut phone lines, the police would know that it was pretty unlikely that someone would do that, make it look like they got kidnapped and disappear. So the main reason I took the suitcases was because I only had a small backpack with me, and I wanted to keep all of their stuff separate from my stuff. I had a lot of stuff in the backpack that I had with me. And so everything I took from their house, I wanted to keep separate so I could go through it later. And yeah.
What kind of stuff do you have in your backpack?
I don't know if I want to go into all that today.
All right. This is your call.
Would a cigar help?
No, Kimberly's car getting back would help.
Well, we're working on that. I mean, we're halfway there, considering that we got...
No, that's great. We're making progress, I know. It's a long time to go without your car, though, if you think about it.
I understand that.
I was just feeling bad for it. I was like, man, this is going to... it's easy for me because I just sit in a cell, but 2 months to not have your car, that sucks.
It does. And
especially in a town like Anchorage.
And now that we've gotten his talking out of the way, let's take a look at what the rest of the year had in store.
From the Register Herald, May 19th, 2013. High on a hill, in woods overlooking a multifamily cemetery, a hunter set about readying a tree stand for the fall season when he spied a human skull. Before long, other body parts were discovered, scattered across the forest, all belonging to Rachel Michelle Toller, missing for months. This was in October of 2011. 7 months later, within the same general vicinity, the body of Chester Stewart, weighted down with 2 cinder blocks bound with rope, lay at the bottom of a homemade swimming pool filled with 9 feet of water at an abandoned house, about a quarter of a mile from his home in Matheny. To the 2 confirmed deaths, add the bizarre disappearances of Brian David Cook and Sherry Myers, still unaccounted for, and a puzzling case continues to befuddle law enforcement officers in a county with a reputation for rampant drug abuse. Sheriff Randall Aliff, now in his 4th and final term, is determined to resolve the mystery, one for which he has no good reason to feel is ominously linked to the shadowy world of the drug culture. Not a day passes that he doesn't think about the 4 victims and is resolved to bring a measure of closure to their families. At times, the sheriff says he awakens at 1:30 a.m., studying those and other crimes and ways of getting pushers off the streets of the small towns in his jurisdiction. We've done an investigation into this, an extensive investigation, he says of the 2 murders and the 2 missing persons cases. We've done drug roundups, arrested drug dealers, hoping to get information that way. At this time, information is just very small forthcoming. Aliff must sort through a myriad of theories. Did the victims fall prey to a violent trafficker, angry over non-payment of a drug debt? Was it a spur-of-the-moment slaying by a user looking for something to steal so drugs could be purchased? Or could the bloodshed simply be the work of a psycho? Normally, Wyoming County is a good quiet county, Aliff said one day last week in his office. Yet, as the drug scourge engulfs the entire nation, not even a rural community has been spared. Drugs are as much a menace there as in the big cities across the nation. Just call it the way the world is this day and time, he says, sighing. Assuming the missing persons met a similar fate as Toller and Stewart, the sheriff is convinced the case engulfs more than one person, and that those responsible for the bloodshed
remain in Wyoming County to this day. I would have to think the same person is probably going to be involved in 3 of the people, but there's one death I can't say for sure. For obvious reasons, Aleph is reluctant to share all he knows about the matter, but he theorizes that since Toller, Stewart, and Myers were acquaintances and lived in the same general areas, that they are connected in death and disappearances. You hear a lot of suspicions, he said. People will say, you've got to arrest so-and-so, you've got to have a case to arrest somebody. When you arrest them, you better have calls. You got to prove it. You jump too soon and that case gets dismissed, and possibly you can't recharge someone if you did get something. Aleph's deputies recovered much forensic evidence at both murder scenes, and the sheriff is waiting a report from the Smithsonian Institute on postmortems to learn the causes of death. If we could get one lucky break, we'd really wrap this thing up, he said. No tip is dismissed, and a futile search for the body of Myers. The sheriff enlisted the aid of a local firm's extractor, and dug up several old wells in Matheny, all to no avail. Anything we receive, we follow up on, he said. We follow up on anything we hear. Considered separate but related in the sense that drugs likely precipitated them were the fatal shootings of 2 men, Escar Lee Hurley and Stephen Ray Lawrence of Simon. Hurley's body was discovered near the dam overlook at R.D. Bailey Lake in June of last year. State police looking into Lawrence's demise say the victim was discovered in mid-December along Coal Mountain Road near Long Branch Hollow. Both were shot. I most speculate those are drug-related, but were not related to the other deaths in Matheny. Aleph is open to anonymous tips and says he's willing to work with state and federal agencies to provide protection for anyone willing to step up and help solve the cases. I feel like there are some people that do know, he said. Surely I do. But I think they're afraid to talk. I could protect them if they could come forward. Absolutely. If I couldn't, I would find an agency that would help me. I'm not as big as the FBI or somebody like that, but we work with the FBI and the ATF. I would try to provide some kind of agency to get some kind of protection for those people. Anyone with information is welcome to call Aleph or his deputies, preferably between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. at their office line. I would love, before ending my career, to solve these things, says Aleph, who first pinned on a badge as a patrolman in Pineville. We want to solve every crime. I don't care how petty or how major.
I had 2 cases where I thought would be the accident victim. One of them comes about when you Google missing boy San Juan. This is in 2011. And we sort of agreed we're not going to bring this one up. But they're both weird. So there's that case, and it's real similar to the Mopin incident. What we couldn't figure out was, there should have been witnesses for that one. But he was interesting. Basically, that one, Meg said, no, they've got a resolution. Don't mess with it. So I agree with her on that. But it is a good case. And when I Googled, this is connected to the 4 Rolandos. I couldn't figure out why Rolando, the kid from Puerto Rico in '99, was in there. So that's one of the cases that pops up. But it's not in Puerto Rico. It's actually in a completely different place. The other one is this case of Stonewall. This is the guy's name. This is trail moniker. So he fits my theory that the killer is only talking about things that are on the computer. And I thought Stonewall would be on there. So Stonewall is a kid from South Bend, Indiana, 30 years old. He's not found in South Bend, Indiana. And why I think it could be this killer is there used to be a location there, but the location's been replaced by something else. So in August of 2011, a group of hikers finds a shallow grave. There's a guy in there. His name is Scott Lilly, but he goes by Stonewall. No one's, to my knowledge, been held accountable for this, or are they really looking for it? This is a federal land crime. It actually took place in George Washington National Forest. So what this guy had been doing was he was out doing the Appalachian Trail at all. Nobody speaks out for this guy. His sister shows up and she talks about him briefly and remembers him very fondly. And this guy from when he had been a kid in youth group, he speaks out about him. So the last time anybody saw Stonewall, it was late July. We saw him climbing this area known as the Priest, which is a 2-day walk. It's a mountain in Nelson County, Virginia. And the Appalachian Trail, sometime between that, the end of July and August 12th, when he was found, it's not very far from where he was found. The results were somebody took all his stuff, all of it. They took all of his gear. The murder and I guess we call that a robbery, but even his shoes were gone. Seriously, it was all of his hiking gear. he died as a result of asphyxia by suffocation. And I'm pretty sure if you go hunting in there, in the computer, you'll find Virginia maps in there. You know, he was hitting parks over and over. So his cause of death being asphyxia by suffocation and him being found in sort of a shitty grave fit like what I was thinking overall for the accident victim. He, like, in my mind, Stonewall is the accident victim.
From the Rockridge Report at WLU.edu on October 6, 2011 by Courtney Reidenhauer. On August 12th, hikers discovered the body of a thru hiker on the Appalachian Trail in Hog Camp Gap, about 10 miles east of Buena Vista in Amherst County. Scott Lilly of South Bend, Indiana, had been murdered. The FBI initially focused on 5 individuals, identified publicly by their trail names. In September, rumors began flying on an Appalachian Trail website saying that one of the hikers was a suspect. On Tuesday, the FBI denied that. After 2 months of investigation, authorities have no suspects. FBI spokesperson Dee Ribisky said the agency contacted 5 hikers who may have had contact with Lilly to build a timeline and help with filling the gaps on Lilly's hike. The hikers, however, are not considered suspects. There were never any suspects, added Brian King of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Since 1974, 9 hikers have been killed in 6 separate incidents on the trail. Lilly's death is the first trail-related murder since 2008. In a September 2nd press release, investigators announced the trail names of 5 hikers who were believed to have met Lilly on the trail. Adopting a trail alias is a standard practice among thru hikers, those who hike all 2,180 miles of the Appalachian Trail between Maine and Georgia. Since the press release, hikers wrote on online forums that Papa Smurf, one of the 5 listed, was a person of interest based on reports of thievery. But Ribisky said investigators contacted Papa Smurf and the other 4 hikers to construct the Lilly timeline. There were 3 to 4 different Papa Smurfs out there, she said. It was simply people that we kind of wanted to touch base with. She said the FBI is releasing these few details to help investigators distinguish valuable tips from misinformation. The FBI cannot discuss suspects, she said. The FBI has said that Hog Camp Gap area is safe and hikers are not at risk, but investigators' response to other recent suspicious activity has been rapid. In late August, a second body was found near the trail in George Washington National Park. Although it was later determined to be a natural death, a team of 30 investigators and volunteer hikers descended on the area.
So the problem with 2011, so first of all, the timeline for 2010 and 2011, they mirror each other in a lot of ways. A lot of similar trips are taken at the same times. And there's some things that like he couldn't have possibly done that we put in the list anyway. But by the time we got to 2011, I couldn't tell you how many homicide cases I looked at, how many incident reports I'd read, how much research I'd done online, how many autopsy photos I got my hands on, how many hours of interviews. But there's so many missing children and couples that just vanished with no good reason, and so many homicides in 2011 to cover. I'm still not even done. Like, even now, I have material that like covers my thoughts, but I know it's incomplete. There are places that he was just barely going through where a homicide would pop up again and again and again. And this year, the couples and families and the little kids that like truly vanished with no good cause or reason, it started making me sick. Like it got to the point in trying to cover 2011 and all the places I thought it would been, that when I told the story, when I sat down and mapped it all out, I mapped it out from 1996 to 2010, and I left 2011 out originally. I'm only telling it here because it has so many important pieces related to the couriers and so much lead up. But ultimately, 2011 was a nightmare for me, not in the same way that some of the earlier years were where I wanted to quit. It's just like, it's impossible to cover. Like, and Meg helped so much with this year and going through and like listening to like all these different things that was playing out, and we still couldn't cover it. And everyone around me jumping in and assisting with 2011, you know, we've covered it in 3 big chunks over a span of like years, because it was so hard to get the paperwork and to get through everything and to really map out where we thought he really was, as opposed to what the FBI timeline says that he's doing. like to figure out what the differences were.
St. Lawrence County in the Adirondacks at the top of New York State. So far up, if you take a wrong turn, you could wind up in Canada. The Raquette River runs through it. Tractors, silos, and dwindling herds of black and white dairy cows punctuate the endless green acres. Amish buggies clip-clop through the small town of Potsdam. 4 local colleges bring a pinch of diversity to this predominantly white area. This is the North Country. But on a rainy October afternoon in 2011, the rural routine is about to be rocked by a terrible crime.
It's about the unexplained death of 12-year-old Garrett Phillips.
It is 4:53 in the afternoon. Surveillance cameras capture fleeting images of 12-year-old Garrett Phillips gliding along on his 2-wheeled ripstick skateboard, heading home after school. Garrett is a popular 6th grader, adventurous and outdoorsy, with a ready smile and a streak of mischief. He and younger brother Aaron are being raised by their mother, Tandy Cyrus.
Tell me about his personality. It just seemed like he was 100 miles an hour all the time. Soccer, lacrosse, basketball, hockey, football.
Wow, an all-around athlete.
Yes.
And was he good at all those sports?
Yes.
And this isn't just a proud mom talking.
No.
With the kind of good looks that stand out in a small town, Tandy can be a heartbreaker. A button-down bank manager by day, by night she's fending off admirers while tending bar, which is where she meets soccer coach Nick Hillary.
What attracted you to her?
She showed a lot of interest in what I was doing, and she was an athlete herself.
Was she also beautiful?
She was very good looking.
Nick Hillary immigrated at 16. You can still hear the Jamaica in his voice, but he embraces his adopted country. He served 3 years in the Army, and then he went to St. Lawrence College, where he led the soccer team to the national championship. He then had a career helping kids, first as a math teacher in Florida, then returning to the Potsdam area, becoming head coach at Clarkson University.
So at this point in time, where we are in the season, I'm pretty pleased and really looking forward to what lies ahead.
The former standout soccer star and his kids stand out for another reason as well. They are one of the few black families in town.
Do you feel like you stuck out?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Sometimes you're the only one of color in the grocery store.
And then in 2010, the Jamaican-American soccer coach and the local beauty Tandy Cyrus become involved, started dating. The attractive couple attracting attention in this small town, which is nearly 95% white.
What was the reaction in town?
There was a little bit of mixed opinions, I guess. Gossip, small town. No, I can't believe they're dating, or that's weird.
It was just a very hostile environment for myself trying to have a relationship with Tandy.
The relationship lasts about a year until Tandy and her 2 kids move out, all happening just weeks before that dreary Monday in Potsdam. Garrett heading home to their new apartment on Market Street on his ripstick, the last ride of his life. He has just 8 minutes to live.
We heard running next door in the hallway, and then we heard a loud crash.
Across the hall from Tandy's place, college students Sean Hall and Marissa Vogel are watching Dexter. The show about a serial killer is interrupted by something that they say sounds like a body hitting the floor next door.
I said, "Did you hear that?" Either no or ow, and then definitely a help. So I knew it was one of the children right away. It just sounded urgent.
Marissa knocks, listens, and hears on the other side of the door a distinct sound.
It was completely quiet until I heard a click of a lock.
That's all, just click.
It was instant goosebumps. There is somebody on the other side of this door who does not want me being here right now.
Potsdam Police.
My name is Marissa Vogel. I thought I heard some screaming like no and help a couple of times.
Minutes later, an officer arrives and he sees Garrett's backpack, Garrett's ripstick, and then Garrett himself lying on the floor of his mother's bedroom. They rush him to the hospital and send for his mother, Tandy.
You're thinking dislocated shoulder or sprained ankle.
Exactly. And then he's telling me that My son is in full cardiac arrest.
How did he look to you?
At one point in time, they had to use the AED machine.
I can't even imagine what that was like for you.
I felt like I was watching it happen to somebody else.
Did they let you touch him, hold him?
I stayed in there. I don't even know how long I was in there. I told him I loved him.
Heartbreak turns to horror when an autopsy finds rug burns on Garrett's legs and suspicious marks on his face and neck. The cause of death, suffocation and strangulation. 12-year-old Garrett Phillips had been murdered.
I can't even fathom at what point the shock begins to wear off and the questions begin.
The next day, I had gone down to the police station, and that was when I had found out it wasn't an accident and that somebody had been in my apartment.
Potsdam police told the public they would work the case as best they could.
The killer was in her apartment, but how did he get out? Lead investigator Mark Murray takes me inside the crime scene.
What did you notice about this window at that point?
The screen forced out. It was a big set of metal blinds, and the window was slightly up, about 1.5 feet.
Police say the killer made an acrobatic escape from the rear window of Garrett's apartment.
It's around 20 feet from the windowsill down to the ground.
Wow. A picture of the killer begins to emerge, athletic, and judging by the drop and the gouge in the ground, possibly injured.
Did anybody see anybody come in this apartment?
We did several neighborhood canvases. We really came up without anyone directly witnessing anyone at all coming out that window.
What happened to little baby Lisa Irwin? She's the 10-month-old who simply vanished 5 years ago.
And her parents recently sat down with our investigative reporter, Angie Racono. Brad and Ellen, the Irwins still live in the same home. And as we showed you at 6, there are posters and banners covering the house. They've never been taken down. And inside, Lisa's crib is still in her bedroom. It's packed with all the presents for the birthdays and the holidays that she has missed. 5 years. Tonight, we take a look at where the clues lead now.
She's missing. Her name is Lisa Irwin. We're running around the house and we're screaming for her. I said, call 911, call 911.
Obviously, they are our main focus. I'm not calling them suspects.
What's going on? Where's she at? Why is she gone?
Now they're looking for a body and not a baby. We all want the safe return of baby Lisa.
We need her home.
And I'm still stuck at age 1 when she liked Barney and when she was barely walking, and now she's going to be 6 and possibly in school. And we've missed out on everything.
I know you guys both firmly believe Lisa is alive and Lisa is out
Absolutely. There's not a doubt in my mind. And I'm her mom. I have my mother's intuition, and I have never once felt for a second that she is been hurt or gone.
5 years later, they still beg for information.
Think of how much she deserves to be with the people that love her the most.
Or think of yourself and take the money and leave town. Whatever it's going to take.
They think she was kidnapped, then sold.
This was not a one-person deal.
There's still a $100,000 reward in the case. Here's what happened in 2011. Jeremy Irwin returns home from work around 4 in the morning. The front door is unlocked. His daughter is missing from her crib. He wakes his wife and calls 911 from his work phone because the family's cell phones are reportedly missing. Published reports say those phones stayed close to the family home and were used throughout the night. The parents originally suspected someone came in through a front window or front door and then made their way back to Lisa's room. The phones were charging in the kitchen. Nothing else was taken. An Amber Alert was issued, and investigators swarmed the house and neighborhood searching for little Lisa. They searched wells, combed fields, and one cadaver dog reportedly smelled something in the parents' bedroom.
Try to think of anything or anyone or any reason this might have happened.
It soon became obvious investigators suspected Lisa's mother. Did you fail a lie detector test?
No, absolutely not. I was told I failed as a tactic, and I understand why they do that.
It's still difficult to talk to them. It's difficult to hear some of their theories, and then after all that is all said and done, you still have to have a workable relationship with these guys down there at the police department.
Deborah drank with a neighbor the night her daughter vanished. That information cut both ways. Some speculated she may have accidentally killed her daughter, then hid the body. But others wondered, how could a drunk person commit the perfect crime?
Well, my gut tells me, without any doubt, that somebody unknown to the family came into this home, was in and out of the home very, very quickly.
Attorney Cindy Short represented the family in those early days and remains in close contact with them. She calls the parents credible and heartbroken.
And there's an open field beyond these trees.
Short conducted her own investigation. She explored other leads where neighbors reported seeing a man and a baby the night Lisa went missing.
Our prayer is that once the baby left this part of the community, or Clay Como, that she ended up somewhere safe and warm. Statistically, that's probably not the outcome, but it's certainly the one we pray for.
One tip that became very public involved this man, John Tanko. He's a handyman with a criminal record who worked near the Irwins at that time. He dated this woman, Megan Wright, who says her phone was called by one of those missing cell phones the night Lisa vanished. Wright says others had access to her phone. Kansas City police report Tanko cooperated with investigators, and they are satisfied with his answers.
I do not believe this was a stranger abduction.
Former FBI agent Michael Tabman says kidnapping a 10-month-old doesn't make sense. Statistically, stranger abductions generally involve middle school girls, like 11-year-old J.C. Dugard, 12-year-old Polly Klaas, and 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart. Lisa's age was tough to explain.
Why would this child at this age be disappearing now?
5 years have rolled by. Age progression photos show what she may have looked like at 3 and now 5.
If she's out there and she can see this, I would just want her to know that we love her, we miss her a great deal, and we're going to find her, and we're not going to stop looking for her.
I love you, Lisa.
We will get her back home where she belongs one of these days.
Comparison searches for 2011. He has Bill and Lorraine Courier in there. He has Holly Bobo, Amir Jennings, and he has Aaliyah Lunsford from West Virginia. So he's got 5 people in there, 2 of which we know he's responsible for by his own self-report, or we at least have every reason to believe that he did something with them. So of those 5, we've always been suspicious of Holly Bobo. She falls into the timeline of like what's on the computer, but he never talks about her. And technically in his lifetime, her body wasn't found. Then Amir Jennings, the mom was pregnant and supposedly missing at the same time, but it didn't turn out that way. Aaliyah Lunsford, I think, was an error. Aaliyah Lunsford is not a possibility for me. Someone else has confessed to that. So those are the 5 we have to work with as far as comparison searches in 2011.
I looked at Randall Childs and Karen Young. That's the Michigan couple that they just walk away in June 2011. It was around the time of the Couriers, so we couldn't make it all work. We just thought it was interesting that like there's no paperwork on their case. The 2 of them just left. The cases remain unsolved, and nobody really seemed to care. The gist of it was somebody said they got into an argument, they walked out of the house, and they just vanished. And that's in June 2011, but it's in Michigan. And there are other cases we looked at, we looked at like a couple guys that disappeared at the fishing hole, a couple of girls that like left, messages at home. We looked at these twins. That was like fascinating to me that these 2 twins disappeared. They were little kids. And again, this is the year of like the family stuff. So we had the Biblano family goes missing in January 2011 with 4 people. The Malaska Rivera family goes missing with 3 people. You got the Couriers who go missing, Randall Childs and Karen Young. I think that was the year that Ronaldo, instead of Ronaldo, we had a Ronaldo, but he was too far away for all of it to have happened. The Decay Bush twins go missing. The Martinez family goes missing. That's 4 people. The Cortez family goes missing. That's 4 people. There was a lot of interesting cases that when we go looking for like the information, the missing persons report, the incident reports, there's nothing at all. Nobody cared. The other case was Phoenix Coldon later in the year.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So this girl goes missing in East St. Louis in Illinois, not Missouri, but Illinois. She goes missing, and her car has been towed. It's a mysterious disappearance. It's very similar to one that happened earlier down in Georgia. I don't even remotely put him in this place or time or anything, except for one thing. Her birth name was Phoenix Reeves. And Phoenix Reeves, the name, was attached to 4 people when the U.S. Marshals ran the search looking for this Phoenix Coldon. They expanded their search 6 months later, and they looked for Phoenix Reeves. For some reason, Phoenix Reeves, of those 4 people, one of them only existed one time in Anchorage, Alaska in early 2012. That is the only thing that's interesting about her case to me. And
do you have that somewhere? How did you find that?
All right, so missing Phoenix Coldon had 2 birth certificates and was linked to an address in Alaska. So it gives the overview of her case. After a conversation about Phoenix's location, Delia enlists another private investigator to look for credit history and driver's licenses in hopes of finding a link to Phoenix Reeves, her other name. The investigator revealed he was only able to find 4 other Phoenix Reeves in the United States and was able to eliminate 3 of the 4 names based on their background. It's not same information, but it's pretty close. The 4th Phoenix Reeves, however, had no date of birth, no social security number, and no relatives. The investigator conveyed that he was only able to find an address associated with it, and it was associated with a name from January 2012 to June of 2012. Phoenix had disappeared in December of 2011. They traveled to Anchorage, and the address is located in Anchorage, Alaska. They traveled to Anchorage and spoke with a woman whose son owned the home. The son had resided at the residence since 2002, had no knowledge of either Phoenix Coldon or Phoenix Reeves. So that address was linked to a storage unit, and that's it. It doesn't have a social, it doesn't have a date of birth, it doesn't have anything else. That was the only thing that was interesting about her case to me, was that her address, sometime in January of 2012, was used for a 6-month lease. Isn't that weird?
A 6-month lease on a
property in Anchorage, Alaska, and a storage unit. That's it.
Except she didn't actually rent the property.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's just her name.
Okay, so somebody used her name and a fake address to rent a storage unit, is what you're getting at.
Correct.
Huh.
In Anchorage, Alaska.
Right. That's interesting. I mean,
I don't know what to do with it, but that is the only thing I got out of that.
That's really weird. So her car was found with keys still in it, so that wouldn't have been keys, in my opinion.
Ignition was running.
Right, and that's weird to me. That almost looks like, I'm not saying this happened in her case, but like that looks too. It looks. I always wonder if things like that aren't staged, because who leaves their ignition running? And like, even if she was carjacked, they would have taken the car, or you know what I mean?
So the other thing they pointed out was that she would have had 2 birth certificates, because she would have. So up until a point, she was Phoenix Reeves. So she would have had that birth certificate because she would have had that for like all of the things that you do with birth certificates up to your 20s.
Right.
She took her stepfather's name, Holden, later, so she had a birth certificate indicating that change. So she had 2 birth certificates, one in the name of Phoenix Reeves and one in the name of Phoenix Coldon. So when it comes to the idea of her vanishing, absolutely she could have done it. She would have had a way to do it. And the fact that name, and there's another source in here that indicates that the marshals found that name didn't show up anywhere else. And all they were doing was help search.
Well, I was going to say, like, yeah, she could have, except, like, we have the other name.
Yeah, so, and here was the other thing. Someone indicated they thought it might have been a situation where the family was not accepting a gender change. And they had a new name, but they used the birth certificate one time to get established in their new place because they didn't have official identification in the whatever, say it was going to be Brian, whatever. Like she had changed from female to male and transitioned, and the family wasn't accepting of that, so she left. But they don't talk about that enough to really know if it's true or if it has some kind of foundation or if it's just speculation.
Well, how about the fact that her name was Phoenix, and that could go either way? Well, I guess Lucille wouldn't, but Phoenix could go either way, but I guess maybe it's the whole thing. And there's no suspect? I mean, that's really strange.
The only thing that gets a mention for me there is the fact that it shows up in Anchorage, because I thought that was weird.
Yeah, I didn't see anything like that about that case, but yeah, that is weird. And it definitely would be something worth looking into.
The bodies of John and Geraldine McGee were found in their home in Andover on the morning of December 14th, 2011. The couple, in their late 60s, had been shot to death. Their daughter and grandchildren made the startling discovery. There were no signs of a break-in, no fingerprints found, and nothing was taken. The night before, the couple's SUV was found on fire on Prince Street in Boston's North End. Now, on the 5-year anniversary, Andover Police and the Essex County DA's office are once again appealing to the public for help in cracking the cold case. Investigators say they followed leads to 4 states and 20 cities and towns in greater Boston, searching financial records, computers, homes, and cars. And despite exhaustive interviews of family, friends, neighbors, and business associates, the double homicide remains unsolved. In appealing to the public for help, Essex DA Jonathan Blodgett issued a statement saying, in part, "We're asking you to search your memory and your conscience. Pick up the phone and call us." Reporting live from the North End, Todd Kiskiewicz, WCVB News Center 5.
So as we wrapped up 2011, Meg was telling me I had to focus back on 2010, which made sense. But there's one case in the comparison searches. This was a West Virginia case, and it was Aaliyah Lunsford. And Aaliyah Lunsford was, a little girl. And we had been wondering, what did he mean when he said, that's how he knew he was out of control, is when he was doing something related to kids, because he had tried not to do that after his daughter was born. We didn't really know if he believed him. But Aaliyah Lunsford was an interesting case. Ultimately, it was not his case. The mother was responsible. There were witnesses. It was horrible. However, the way she spelled her name, Aaliyah, there was, in 2011, there was a little girl named Ayla, A-Y-L-A, as opposed to the A spelling of Aaliyah. I think it's A-I-L-Y-A-H or A-L-I. Whatever that spelling was, there was an Ayla Reynolds. And this was the biggest search in Maine history. It doesn't look like it was in NamUs in time for the comparison searches. It was entered after or right at the same time. So we don't know if he looked for her or if he would have looked for her. So we're wrapping up, we looked back at 2011 because Meg wanted me to go back to 2010. She had some things she wanted to show me. But even now, the Ayla Reynolds case is just playing out. And she went missing. And the parents, the people involved, there was a custody case involved. It's horrible. It's just getting into the courts for wrongful death and for other things. But it was in Maine at a time he would have been there. He was looking for a similar name in NamUs, or he was looking for a similar name in missing persons cases. Whether it's in NamUs or not, we don't really know. And that case sort of fits. There was blood found in the house. We think that the lie might have been, I think the lie might have been that the adults who said they were home weren't home, and he walked in because there's a cemetery right there and a fishing hole. So whether I can say that's him or not, I don't know. But it's an interesting case to take a look at, and that's the Ayla Reynolds case.
A happy Ayla Reynolds dancing around her living room. She was just 20 months old when she disappeared from her father's Waterville home a week before Christmas 2011.
It's been nearly 6 months since Justin DePietro told police his daughter was abducted.
Her father, Justin DePietro, reported her missing on December 17th, telling police he put her to bed the night before and she must have been abducted. In the days, weeks, and months that followed, intensive searches in and around 29 Violet Avenue, a 5-mile radius around the home. Police divers checked the waters of the Kennebec River. A section of the Messalonsky Stream was drained. They found nothing. They searched garbage bins, garages, and backyards. Trista Reynolds filed for full custody 2 days before her daughter was reported missing. The child was living with her father while she checked into a rehab program.
And I just want to tell her, like, she's going to be okay.
Within a week, crime scene tape goes up around the home. Detectives searched the inside. Police say they found blood, and the abduction story, they said, did not pass the straight face test.
We come together today with many tears in our eyes.
At a vigil, a month into the investigation, Ayla's parents see each other for the first time and share a hug and stand shoulder to shoulder to be interviewed.
You can't comment on the blood that was found in the house. Or why
Again, I'm not here to answer any questions. I'm just here to show my support for the community that is supporting Ayla. So.
Nearly 6 months into the investigation, and police determined enough blood was found that they believe Ayla is dead.
We think it is highly unlikely that Ayla Reynolds will be found alive.
Police now putting public pressure on the 3 adults who were inside the home the night before Ayla went missing. Justin DePietro, his girlfriend, Courtney Roberts, and Justin's sister, Alicia DePietro.
As I have stated all along, we believe those 3 individuals inside that home that night know things that they haven't told us.
We spoke with Justin several times in the early days, but he insisted not on camera. Christmas had come and gone. The story was national news now, and Justin DePietro finally broke his silence after being criticized for not taking part in the searches and not being front and center pleading for information.
If there was something solid that I knew, I would be sharing that. But again, I cannot go out there and speculate, and which is what a lot of people have done.
The speculation continues. 2 years after Ayla disappeared, Ayla's mother, desperate for any answers, shows up at the Cumberland County Courthouse in Portland, where Justin was in trouble on charges unrelated to the Ayla case.
Just look at me, Justin, look at me.
Just say where
Justin, please.
Emotions boil over.
Look me in the eyes.
Let me go right in here.
Earlier this year, the syndicated TV show Crime Watch Daily showed up at the DePietro home. Alicia DePietro was questioned by the reporter and offered something the public had never heard.
What would explain the blood? She'd been vomiting quite a lot. She had lactose issues. Okay. So she had been sick.
And so now, after 5 long years, 1,500 tips from 40 states, a $30,000 reward, no suspects, nobody charged, and the same question remains. Where's Ayla?
Justin DePietro remains silent. He didn't return our calls. His mother hung up on us, and Courtney Roberts is now an ex-girlfriend. Meanwhile, Trista's family had discussed filing a wrongful death lawsuit against the 3 in hopes that lawyers would be able to get some new information. But the family has decided against that right now. They are instead moving forward to declare Ayla dead.
Thanks for joining us. You can reach us at 252-365-5593 or at truecrimexcess.com or truecrimexcess@gmail.com if you want to send us a note. This episode was brought to you by LabrottieCreations.com. That's LABROTTIECREATIONS.com. Check out the merchandise and specifically their fun Pop Pet art custom pieces made from photos of your very own pets. Use the promo code CRIMEXS, that's CRIMEXS, for 20% off a fun, brightly colored, happy piece of art of your own pet at their site. at BrodyCreations.com. Music in this episode was licensed for True Crime XS. The theme song was Indestructible by Noah Smith. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform or at TeePublic, Instagram, or Twitter. You can also join us on Patreon to fund future body exploration trips. But the best thing you can do for us is leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform and share us with your friends. And don't forget, on July 3rd, we are literally revealing where the bodies are buried. See you next week.
This is True Crime XS.
I found this case. I want to ask you about it without you reading a lot of it for a second. It's interesting because the family did something very similar to another case. What do you think about a 6'4", 6'5", 225-pound Canadian guy who just vanishes in the wilderness, say August 2010, that his body should have been found, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So this is in British Columbia. This is in Squamish, to be specific. Really, he's my size.
Mm-hmm.
His feet are bigger than mine by a full 2 sizes.
Mm-hmm.
Guy wears like a 16 or 17 hiking boot. What's interesting is because of his, and the reason I mentioned those, because of his hiking boot, they were able to track him certain places because, it leaves an imprint when you're that big and your boots are that big. And his family hires a helicopter with high definition camera, go up multiple days. His name is Tyler Wright. They upload the footage online and ask people to look through it.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, I feel like 2010 was a rampage, and I've got him. The rampage sort of starts for me with this Alcan hotel fire up at Lake Watson, whatever that area is, where he had driven up. One of the hotels, like he stayed across from that year, gets burned to the ground. It was very interesting. So I tracked him all around Canada to try and see what I could link him to in 2010. Do you think he would take on somebody my size? Because you've had an opinion about that in the past. My gut says no, but there is no other explanation for this guy.
I don't know anything about that case, but how old was this person?
I'm just looking for his basic description real quick.
Well, I would need a whole lot more information. But your question was, do I think that he would take on somebody your size or bigger? And I think it's possible, but I don't think that that's his preference.
35 years old.
35. Okay. In those types of cases, so was he on a trip or was he just, did he just end up there randomly? Tyler. Mm-hmm.
So Tyler sets out, here's Tyler's deal.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler specifically sets out and says, I'm going to hike from this location to this location in this many days.
Mm-hmm.
The rundown of that is, I think it's a 5-day hike. He doesn't meet up where he's supposed to. Okay, so he was last seen on August 10th, and he headed out onto the Squamish Trail. Where did he go in the trail at Bull Creek, I think. Okay, so he goes in. He's supposed to be on a 5-day hike.
Okay.
And he thought he might be able to cover Coquitlam area in 4 to 5 days. So he's last seen on August 10th heading onto the trail. And then on August 18th, they start digging in and looking for him. And then by August 20th or August 22nd, depending on which article you read, they start posting this footage online for people to go through to notice signs that searchers might be missing, because the searchers are having to go through this thick area on the ground. And they keep, as this progresses, they keep finding evidence that someone is in the area that they're looking in. They're not sure if it's him, but then they come across his shoe prints, and they're like, okay, these are distinctive. Because, not that many people wear a size 16 hiking boot.
Right.
What was interesting about it is they even, a couple years later, they post this amazing interactive map, which should sound familiar to you for 2010 cases. They start putting these entries in of, who have done which searches. Now, it's not like the other one. There's not GPS tags where you can follow it. These are just like people taking pictures and saying we went here and we did this, but it's like the Canadian version.
Okay, so what kind of equipment did he have with him?
Just basics. He just had a backpack, and like they described like that he could climb like small areas, not like a scramble, but like an ongoing trek hike. I think he had his boots and his backpack. He had enough for 4 or 5 days. As far as supplies go.
Okay, and this was 2010?
Yeah, this is British Columbia 2010. It's in August. It's so close to that other case. I was like, he wouldn't do that twice, would he? And it's not necessarily one we have to mention per se or have an opinion on. The main question that I wanted to know was like,
do you think he would go after somebody bigger than him?
That big, yeah, like that big, like.
Yeah, I think he would. I think that he would have, it would probably be different. He would have to probably take them by surprise.
That's what I was wondering too. Like how would that go? Because that's the hardest thing for me to picture it. Because I told you, like, the fact that people like this guy exist scares the shit out of me. But he's not.
Right. It would be I don't see he's being able to kill you. Like, not just you, but like somebody your size. I don't see that happening because you would be a formidable opponent, like just physically fighting with him.
Right. And that's what I think about this guy, except if statistically, just going by the numbers, me and this guy, and I put big air quotes on this, same size, but like realistically, this guy looks like the size, but he has the physique. Like in the pictures they have of him on social media, he just looks like somebody. Like I almost think they're downplaying his number. Like when they say 6'4", 225, and I see the pictures of him on social media, that's not what I think. I think 6'5", 6'6", 250, no fat. So that's why I was asking it, because this guy, he's got his head shaved down, like. He just looks like he could really fucking handle himself. And I was like, would he do that or no?
Well, okay, so do you have any idea where Keys is at that time?
Well, if you look at, that's the problem with this, and we ran into this with something else. If you look at the FBI timeline, and including like the dark spot timeline and everything, this is in the middle of mid-August 2010. If we look at, it goes from, so we got August 8th is a Seattle transaction on somebody's credit card statement that's redacted. But before that, on August 2nd, we have nope, not him. It's the same thing as the next year. Okay, so in July 22nd, 2010, is a Vegas transaction. That's why I said it wrong. It's the same. So there's a Vegas transaction in 2010, same time period in 2011, there's a Vegas transaction. So 2010, the last thing we have for the killer is July 22nd. He has a Vegas flight to Anchorage. And then we don't see him again, except for these little notes that say construction work. We don't see him again till September. He has a couple of notes in there that he's doing construction work, but the next time that he appears with a hard receipt is October 15th, 2010. So that period right there.
There's actually, he completed a course on September 27th, 2010 that was independently verified in Anchorage.
So he was up there for that.
September 27th. It was some sort of, I guess, construction course or something, but they had called and told the FBI, and they had a copy of his ID and like where I think he had to do it for his business license or something. I don't know.
Okay, so he pops back up again in September then. So we have the month of August and the first part of September is sort of a blank slate. It just says that he was doing construction as far as his spiral notebook.
Okay, and so how would he have gotten into Canada? crossing the border. I mean, it's just a lot for me to absorb.
So here's the one thing I haven't been able to get yet. I haven't been able to get the Canadian side of the border crossings. So what if he's just going back into the U.S. surreptitiously because he has a passport that he carries with him because he had the passport in Texas?
Right. And, okay, so, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. And to me, it is really easy to go into Mexico or, like, to theoretically go into Canada. My thing is, coming back in, there would be a record.
I'm not saying there wouldn't be. I'm just saying, I don't have an official record of that. I don't have any proof of that. But do you think that the only time he left Alaska into Canada was when he was coming and going the very first time? As far as into Canada, I don't mean going from Alaska to Seattle or Alaska to Vegas. I mean into Canada. He's going to live up around all that beautiful fishing and hiking and hunting space and not do it?
I mean, I can't say. I mean, it doesn't really seem like that would be the only time, but
now I got to go do a whole new thing. Damn.
So let me ask you this. Oh wait, no. Never mind.
What?
I was gonna say I got the year confused, thinking that he was right after the Couriers.
No, the one that's right after the Courier, I think, is the guy that went missing up at Guilford, New Hampshire, right beside the National Forest area. His name is Kevin King, and I think he went missing June 9th or June 11th was the last time somebody saw him. I think that guy, whatever date he went missing, Kevin King, I think is the guy right after the Courier.
And where was he at?
Guilford, New Hampshire, right next to the big state park there that bleeds into the National Forest. And I don't even know if he's on NamUs, but Kevin King, K-I-N-G, that's who I think is the one right after the Courier. And, I kind of messed around with Guilford, New Hampshire multiple times because there were weird cases there that come up over the years, but I think that's him.
Yeah, I don't hear anything about this case.
Yeah, there's nothing to it. That's the thing. It's not publicized or anything. It's just one of those cases that exist, and they assume. I think there was something slightly off about the guy, and he wandered off, and they were like, "Oh, he's gone." Even it's terrible. The paperwork, trying to read it, it's oh, it's good to know that people are safe when they call the police.
What is the benefit of reporting someone missing besides having them found?
Not being accused of their murder later, I think, is probably the only thing.
Okay. Have you looked into the case of Bill Owasco? I feel like, in most cases where people go missing in the wilderness, I always think to myself, it's not that they disappeared. It's somewhere that they haven't looked yet, right?
Yeah.
All the way up until Bill Owasco. That kind of changed a little bit. But, before that particular case, I've always felt like, they didn't disappear. They're out there somewhere. And, it's just going to take time to find them.
Into that deep blue abyss, out of mind, 'cause I got used to it. It never really felt that alone to me. It never really felt that alone. I got it. I got that feeling again, so I got out. I put my windows down. It never really felt that alone to me. It never really felt that alone. times will pass you by, feeling rich, even when the money's tight. And don't forget that it's a lonely thing to put yourself before everything. Do you find it hard to believe in anything at all? Do you think it's out of reach to lose yourself completely and hang on to that feeling? On the edge or deep inside, right up front, it's where it likes to hide. We only see what we want to see, so we don't see much of anything. Do you find it hard to believe in anything at all? Do you think it's out of reach to lose yourself completely and hang on to that feeling? Painted black or painted white, call it whatever you think defines